I've been dying to dig into this model, and today's the day. Don't go away. Hello everyone and welcome to Fat Guy Productions. I am Paul, coming to you as always from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. I have been waiting a very long time to start the build on this amazing model, the Trumpeter 1/200th scale USS Arizona. And today, I finally get to start building. In today's video, I plan to work as far through the hull and main deck as I can, so I really need to get moving. Let's get to it. This is a very big kit, and organization will be vital. So I'm going to try something I haven't ever done before here. I'll be leaving the trees in their individual bags and labeling the bags with the alphabetic identifier so I can easily find the right sprues as I need them. Between the kit and the add-on deck and all the photo etch, I have a ton to keep organized, and hopefully this will help. The instructions start you off working on the hull and then jumps to a bunch of sub-assemblies before bringing details to the lower part of the ship. I'll be a little loose with the instructions as I want to get as close to finishing off the hull and main deck as I can now. I'll work on the sub-assemblies while I have times where I have to wait for things to dry and such. Starting with the lower portion of the hull, I'll add in the props and the rudder. I'll follow the directions and find my parts. I remove everything from the sprues with my Tamiya side cutters, which I love. Then everything gets a once over with the X-Acto knife and sanding sticks. Once all the parts are ready, I'll start the assembly. For this build, I'll be using a combination of glues, but the go-to will be Tamiya Extra Thin Cement, followed closely by the Tamiya Quick Setting Extra Thin. When I change glues, I'll be sure to let you know what I'm using and why. It's funny, I remember as a young model builder how I hated liquid cement and only ever wanted to use Testors tube cement. Now, I understand how good liquid cement actually is, and I know it was just my lack of knowledge and skill that made me spurn the liquids. Just put the parts together, align them, and then touch the union with the cement brush and let the glue flow right through the joint. It really is like magic. The kit parts are clean, well detailed, fit great, and have very little flash. I hit a snag here. I didn't order brass props, and when I saw the ones that came with the kit, I knew they weren't going to do. So I ordered a set online, and to keep myself busy, I moved on with the prep of the rest of the lower hull for primer and paint. I used an X-Acto to scrape away any casting lines I find, and then I'll take some sandpaper to some of the areas until the hull is smooth and clean. In my opinion, the bottom only needs a cursory pass as it will never be seen after the model is done, so just don't kill yourself on it. Once cleaned up, I'll wipe the hull down and prime it with Tamiya Fine Primer to unify the giant hull. The darn thing is so big, I really don't have any good way to show the priming and painting, so you'll just have to use your imagination here a little bit. While at the paint booth, I also primed the upper part of the hull. Once it dried, I sprayed the lower edge of it on the sides a flat black color to be the waterline. I don't need to be careful here, as it will later get masked and the entire upper part of the hull will get primed again. So I have the dry upper part of the hull, and I'll now tape it off to establish the clean edges of the waterline. I dig through my tape and I find one that has a correct relative thickness, and I begin to tape. Now is as good a time as any to discuss the vision I have for my build. My ship will be very clean. No real weathering, no wear and tear. My hull will be a semi-gloss and the upper part's flat. My ship will look sort of like it might have looked on its christening day. I'll be using upgrades for my build, and I'll discuss those at length as we come to them. So I found the tape I'm happy with, and I start running it around the ship, keeping it flush with the lower edge of the part. The instructions don't really make it clear whether the waterline should be painted on the top or the bottom part, but the best I can make out from the images is it should be painted on the upper part. I'm using the paint colors on the paint call-out sheet from the kit. For the bulk of the ship, I'm using Mr. Color C4 Semi-Gloss Navy Blue. This, to me, seems so very dark, but from what I've read, it's accurate for the Arizona. First, the upper part gets some primer, and then I will now paint the upper part of the hull in this navy blue. Even if you plan to use a deck kit, paint the top as well to make sure you don't see a mottled look through the thin veneer of the deck pieces. You'll notice I didn't do that, and I would later have to go back and fill in areas I passed on. So do as I say, not as I do. I'll peel the tape off the waterline as soon as my airbrush is clean. It comes out great, and I'm overjoyed at an early success on the build. Now I can paint the lower part of the hull. I'm going to paint it hull red, also a Mr. Color paint from the callout. It's number 29, hull red. Even though the paints say they're semi-gloss, they look a little too flat to me. So later, I'll overcoat these parts with semi-gloss clear, which in itself will bring an issue. On Amazon, I ordered a couple of cans of Mr. Color Semi-Gloss Clear Coat. When it got here, I just assumed it was what I thought it was. So I took the ship out, hung it from some hooks, and started to put clear coat on, working from the bottom up. All of a sudden, I noticed that the hull was turning gray. I stopped and looked, and somehow I got a gray semi-gloss, not a clear semi-gloss. This screwed me all up. I had to go mask things off and repaint portions of the lower part of the hull. Never take anything for granted. As I'm dealing with the hull, I start to see a future problem rising. I'm going to want to display my ship on a pedestal or a base of some kind. And I had damn well better figure things out before I build myself into a corner. I took a few measurements and then I got online and I ordered a pre-finished wood base along with a set of brass ship model pedestals. I don't want to do the entire build with this wood clinging to the bottom, so I've developed a plan. I'm going to use a center point finding tape measure, and I'm going to figure out the center line of the base and the offset for the pedestals. I will then get the center point of the lower hull and transfer the marks for the pedestal to it. I'll run the base down to the garage and I'll drill 2 holes for the screws, and I'll drill a countersink. Once back upstairs, I was going to drill the holes for the bolts through the bottom of the hull, but I wanted more precision and control, so I reamed the holes out with my X-Acto blade until they were perfect. With everything prepped, I bolted the entire base and hull together so I could implement my evil plan. I'm going to mix up a batch of JB Weld, and I'm going to glue the nuts into the bottom of the hull. I thoroughly cover the outer edge of the nuts and spread the JB out on the bottom of the hull to give it added support, and then I'll let this dry for 24 hours. With the JB Weld fully dry, I can now remove the bolts and continue working, and later, when I want to mount the ship to its base, I can do it without having to get to the nuts that will be long trapped inside the dark recesses of the ship. Having cleared that little hurdle, I can now marry the upper and lower parts of the hull. The upper snaps on in the middle, and then the kit comes with 4 screws, 2 for the bow and 2 aft, and it locks it all together. Once the screws are in and tight, it's amazing how solid it makes the entire ship feel. It's also a milestone, and I feel really great to be at this point. Now, with the screws in place, I can glue in the fore and rear decks. They really fit great. Pop right in, and then I can use Tamiya cement to lock it all down. Now, for the one single add-on that I think is a must-have for this kit, the wood deck kit from Scale Decks. If you built this model 100% straight out of the box and only added this kit, you'll have a showstopper. The kit is so well done and it looks amazing. Now, I have already attached the foredeck, and I'm now going to show you how to not put the deck on, as I'm going to screw this part up royally. So the deck is made from a very thin wood veneer and laser cut to fit. It's also printed to add variation in the wood planks and define the borders, and frankly, it just looks amazing. On the first part of the deck, I did many a test fit before gluing. It is recommended to use Gorilla brand wood glue to adhere it to the ship. In the first part, I used a brush and I applied a very thin and thorough coating, then I put the deck on. I was diligent in smoothing the deck and being sure to press down any elevated spots. I found a wooden clothespin worked great for this process. Once I felt good about the adhesion, I stacked about a zillion paint bottles on it and I left it. For the foredeck, I'm going to make a ton of mistakes that will end up biting me in my wallet. The first thing I did wrong is I didn't really do any test fitting, which I believe is imperative to loosen up the deck a little bit and allow it to lay down better. Next, rather than applying all the glue with the brush and spreading it thinly, I applied the glue straight to the ship and then spread it around. The effect of this was there was way too much glue. Despite my best efforts, the deck started to warp and pucker, and no matter how hard I tried, it ended up super wavy and lumpy, like a really bad gravy. There was no way I could live with this, so I knew I was going to have to replace it. Now a little bit about scale decks. I love Scale Deck's product. It's amazing. Their customer service? Not so much. I was hoping to just buy a rear deck piece, so I reached out both through Messenger and through Scale Deck's listed email address, and I never got any response of any kind. If the answer about buying just a rear deck was no, fine. But it would have been nice to at least get an answer. So, feeling a little bit ignored, I went back on eBay and I ordered a second set. They got that for sure. They had the whole thing to me in a few days. Oh well, I still recommend the kit, but I would love to see them do a better job with customer service. So, while I waited for the new deck kit, I busied myself with many of the small sub-assemblies, and there are a lot of them. I bought this box at Harbor Freight, and I started cutting out all of the parts. Each compartment got the parts for different assemblies, like the anti-aircraft guns, searchlights, wildcats, and so forth. This was great, and it kept me organized and allowed me to motor through these small builds in no time. So the deck isn't here yet, but I still need to get the old one off, repair any damage, and prep the hull for the new deck piece. The flat X-Acto blade was a lifesaver here. Not only did it allow me to get all of the deck off, it was instrumental in scraping the residual glue off. With the old deck off and the residual glue gone, I did a bit of touch-up of the navy blue just to make sure the color below the wood deck would be consistent. And I was ready now for the new deck part. So the new deck kit is here, and after cutting the deck piece free, I do several test fits. I wanted to make sure the deck would go on smoothly, fit properly, and lay flat. This piece was perfect, and I only found a few small areas that needed some old glue removed. So now I can put the new deck on and pray I don't screw it up again. I'll admit it, I was freaking out a bit, so I did one final test fit. Like a glove. I'm now calm and confident enough to put the piece back on. This time around, I put a bunch of glue in a bowl, and I'll brush it onto the deck with an acid brush. It's the kind of brush you can find in the plumbing section of a home store. Gorilla Wood Glue has a decent open time, but you still need to hustle and be thorough both at the same time. I make extra sure I have total coverage all the way up to the edges, but don't use too much glue. With the glue on, I can finally lay the deck piece in place like I did several times before. And this time, it goes on smooth as poop through a goose. I'll burnish the deck down with my fingers, relying on touch to feel for bumps. This time I plan to babysit the deck and make sure if any spots start to lift that I'll be there to press and smooth them back down. Only after I'm 1,000,000% confident that the deck is down, smooth, and stuck will I stack a ton of bottles on it as a small amount of insurance and relax a bit. Still, I'll check on it many times before really considering it to be okay. I tried different things for pushing the deck down, like the end of a paintbrush, my X-Acto, and other kinds of things, but I found my way back to my wooden clothespin. It had different edges and shapes, and it wouldn't damage the deck. It really was great for doing this. So, I'm about to wrap up this part of the build. I'm going to busy myself by painting and gluing down small deck parts before moving on, but that's going to be it for this part. Well, there you have it. I've finally gotten started, and I feel like I made some great headway. Principally, the hull is done, and I have a good head start on many of the small sub-assemblies. When we come back for part 3, I'll be working on the upper decks, the main guns, the exhaust stack, and so much more. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, click subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an episode of the Arizona build. If you have any questions or comments, I sure would love to hear your thoughts on this project. A different perspective is always a good thing. So, that's it for this episode. Remember, sometimes adversity is just what you need to face in order to become more successful. Until next time, this is Paul from Fat Guy Productions saying, be good.